Freedom of religious expression is a right that many exercise on a daily basis. But what happens when the expression conflicts with the environment?
I've been called a woman who's oppressed and gets beaten up by her husband.
When the time and place to express religion become a little hazy, we ask, what are our rights and how can we protect them? We'll explore that issue right now on Equal Time.
From San Jose State University, you're watching Equal Time, exploring new issues each week, giving equal time to competing points of view.
Hello from the campus of San Jose State University, and welcome to this edition of Equal Time. I'm your host, Journalism School Director Bob Rucker. In the United States, people are allowed to practice their religion without conflict. But as more lawsuits are being filed, the right to express religion is not as simple as it may seem. As Veronica Taylor reports, some people showing their religious tradition say they're suffering discrimination in an un-American way.
Rena Shanawani is just like any other American college student. She's a health science major at San Jose State University and enjoys spending time with her friends, family, as well as playing music. While it seems as though she is an average college student, she has to deal with something others may not: Islamophobia.
I've been called a woman who's oppressed and gets beaten up by her husband every night, even though I'm not married.
Shanawani says this treatment comes from those who do not understand Islam or why she wears the hijab.
One of the biggest misconceptions I hear about, Muslim women wearing the hijab is that they are forced to wear it.
Muslims make up just 1% of the U.S. population.
I wear the scarf because I believe that my body and my appearance is valuable, not only to me, but in general. I believe that by preserving my looks and protecting my body, rather than just displaying it carelessly, would only make me more, I believe it would dignify a woman.
Although Shanawani has experienced name-calling, she has no complaints about how she is treated in the workplace. She works as a nurse's assistant at a children's recovery center, but she did have to adjust her scarf for sanitation reasons. Employers have to know that their workers are followers of the faith before discrimination charges can be proven.
Even if you're a practicing Muslim and you do display that you are a Muslim by wearing the scarf or going to the mosque or performing your 5 daily prayers, that it shouldn't be an issue for you. Living in America, we do have freedom and we do have the right to self-express, and we do have the right to be as we are and not be discriminated against.
When we come back, we'll show you how sometimes it is difficult to accommodate religious expression in other environments, like the workplace or in jail.
If they find a reason to need to inspect someone's headgear, they will do that.
Welcome back. In some cases, expressing religion may conflict with the environment. We'll look at some situations in which religious expression may take a back seat to the concerns for safety. Once again, Veronica Taylor.
In places including the airport, prison, and even the DMV, religious expression may be a problem. People may be asked to remove their religious attire because it is simply policy. In an airport, travelers undergoing security checks may be asked to remove any head coverings altogether if the Transportation Security Administration decides there is reason to do so.
TSA is charged with that difficult mission of making sure that nobody gets through the line that has something on their person that could be a hazard. And so they have to, if they find a reason to need to inspect someone's headgear, they will do that, because otherwise they open themselves up to a vulnerability.
The San Jose Police Department upholds a similar policy.
Whether they're wearing religious attire or whether they're wearing just normal everyday clothing, if we believe they're armed, we are going to pass search them.
Jail facilities face a similar issue when booking inmates. If inmates have an issue with removing their attire due to religion, they must put the request in writing.
They're not asked what religion you are. That's not a topic that they check. If you were to get arrested, you'd be brought in, you'd be checked by mental health, by a nurse. You'd go through a whole procedure till they book you. When you go to where you're going to be housed, then you fill out a form to the chaplain and say, I'm a Muslim, for example, would like to see the imam.
An entire country, France, is enforcing a ban on the Muslim face veil. Offenders wearing the veil in public places could face up to a $200 fine.
Every story has several sides. We'll hear divergent viewpoints when we come back. We'll sit down with a panel of experts and our student reporter when Equal Time returns. Welcome back to this edition of Equal Time. Our focus is religious freedom and public policy, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge before we actually do the introductions. I want you to take a look at all the people here on the panel today, including yours truly, and in your mind right now, through the visual communication that you see only, can you identify the religious cultures of each of the people here? That's very important because it's a part of what we're going to try to talk about during our discussion. Is what we see exactly what truth is? Now, let's meet our guests.
Hello, my name is Attar Siddiqui, and I'm the Vice President of the Bay Area chapter of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as well as the President of SBIA, the South Bay Islamic Association.
My name is Issa Shah. I'm the Communications Director of the Muslim Community Association of the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm also on the Executive Committee of the Council on American Islamic Relations.
My name is Hamidit Chima, and I represent the Sikh community of Bay Area.
I'm Evelyn V. Hill. I serve as facility chaplain for the main jail of Santa Clara County.
And my name is Veronica Taylor, and I'm a broadcast journalism student at San Jose State University, and I produced the story that we just saw.
And a very good job, I might add. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. The focus is religious freedom and government policy, but let's start with some of the basics that we learned in Veronica's piece. This notion of people being discriminated against because of their expression of their religion on the job, how prevalent is that here in the Bay Area?
More prevalent than you think, Bob. As I mentioned, I'm part of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and we hear a number of these cases. And we're often told that I didn't get a job and I believe it's because of religious discrimination, or I lost my job as a result of this. Even here in the Bay Area, about a year ago, we had a complaint from a woman who covers her head. She wears the hijab, the headscarf. And she was in that job for 6 months, and then a regional manager came to that store at which she was working and said that what she was wearing didn't meet the company dress code, and she was let go. Funny how that wasn't an issue for those prior 6 months. It was only when the regional director came down that was an issue. So that is one of many incidents that we've heard of regarding religious attire and how it affects people in the workplace.
And as we challenged the audience before we started, what we see sometimes isn't always what people really are or what their expressions are. I'm going to ask Evelyn to tell me a little bit like what you were telling us before the show. When you go to the jails, you have to take off the cross that you're wearing right now. Tell us why.
Oh, I don't I wear a cross. I'm an ordained minister, Christian minister, and if I want to talk about discrimination, women ministers sometimes have a little difficult time out there in the world just for being a woman. This cross I wore because it's made by inmates out of plastic bags, and it would be contraband. It would be, it's unbreakable. It would be too easy to use it to strangle somebody.
So they make you take it off when you go into your jail ministry?
No, I wear a cross that the chain is breakable. Inmates made this one, and for them it is contraband because it doesn't break.
I see. Very
and
good.
so they can't, it's beautiful. On the street, people would love it. Behind bars, not so good.
Not so good. Hamajid, we were talking also that certain expressions, like people who are Christians, particularly Roman Catholic nuns, you see them in society and they're expected to wear what is normal for their religious culture.
Right.
It's accepted. It's even revered by some people. But what's the experience for you?
Oh, well, I can talk about my personal experience. From my, I generally say to, in discussions like this, if looks can get you killed. Your looks can get you killed. And one of our brethren in Phoenix, Arizona, right after 9/11, was shot and killed because of his looks. Personally, I've been living in Bay Area for almost 20 years now. I've experienced racist comments. People have called me Bin Laden, Taliban, terrorist, hey, go back to your country, things like that.
Mm-hmm. All because you're trying to express yourself in a free society where you're allowed to do that.
Exactly.
Now let me bring in Isa. We were also talking a little bit about this expression issue and how people are uncomfortable with it. What are your thoughts on the personal impact?
My thoughts on the personal impact is, as Hamajid said, looks can get you killed. Remember, that wasn't that long ago in this country where people looking like you or me could get killed just based on how we look. That is not an excuse, or it shouldn't be a reason for us to change how we look or how we express ourselves. It should be more of a chance for us to say, listen, we are part of this American landscape. You have to accept us for who we are.
Mm-hmm. Although that is very difficult. Let me bring in our reporter. When you were researching this story, what were some of the other things you found?
Some of the things that I found in particular with the DMV, I called a few different DMVs in the area and I asked them, okay, what is your policy when someone comes in and they're wearing a religious head covering? Do you make them take it off? Do you make them hike it back? What's the policy? And I got different answers. One of them is you have to take it off completely. You have to see your hair color, even if it's not your natural hair color. You just have to take it off. That's just how it is. The other one that I was told is they have to hike it back just a little bit so you see just a little sliver of hair. So, you know, if a cop looks at your ID, he can tell it is indeed you because that's your hair color. And the other one I was told was no problem, just whatever you come in wearing, that's okay, like that's fine.
Now, people out there might hear what you just said and say, that sounds reasonable, what's the problem?
You know, Veronica brings up an interesting point, and that is that often this type of reaction stems from ignorance. And I don't mean it in a mean-spirited way, but the three DMVs gave you three different answers. Similarly, Hamajid earlier mentioned that somebody told him to go back to where he came from. I have a cousin who wears a headscarf, and she was driving and someone pulled up next to her and asked her to roll down her window. And the person yelled at her, go back to where you came from. And she said, Fort Collins, Colorado, because she was born and raised here. And earlier you mentioned the fact that a Roman Catholic nun will wear a habit, and that's viewed as a symbol of piety and certainly honor and faith. Yet when a Muslim woman wears a headscarf, it's often viewed as a symbol of oppression and extremism. So it's interesting and somewhat disappointing, actually, that there is that dichotomy.
Exactly. We in our society are not really well educated on religious cultures. We have freedom of religion in our Constitution. We exercise it freely in our society. But where's the learning process taking place other than in the home, other than with family? because I find at San Jose State we have a beautifully diverse campus of students from all religious cultures and ethnic and lifestyle experiences, and yet it is very difficult sometimes to get people to relax and to talk about these issues. Evelyn, do you understand what I'm saying? Why are people so uncomfortable with religion and discussing it?
Well, I'm going to come from 2 points of view. One is behind people who are incarcerated, we want to give them the biggest opportunity they have to express their religion, but they have to do it in ways that are required by their faith. For example, I just got these Buddhist beads approved for the facility. The first set that the Buddhist chaplain brought me, he says, can we give these out? I wore them and broke them within an hour. So no, we have to fix that. And so there are limits. We have head scarves. We can't do a full turban like a Homajit has for obvious safety reasons. So we've worked with the Sikh community to get the material and to get it to a length that wouldn't harm others. I think people are afraid because we don't know. We don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to say something to Homajit. Can I touch him? I mean, there are some faith groups that wouldn't shake hands with a woman, for example. So, you know, we need to find other ways of meeting with each other. And yet in the jail or in the prison, everybody's brought together. So how do we help them do that safely?
In the academic setting, there are certainly classes. We teach one in the journalism school called Diversity and Lifestyles in the Media. And students take it as an elective. It's not required, but they start out being afraid. Now, you're a student in our program. Why do you think students, who I think are open-minded and quite open to learning about new things, why do they start out a little tense, a little nervous about a course talking about religion?
I think it's because we want to stay in our comfort zone. We don't want to go outside of it. And also another part of it is I don't want to offend anybody. I'm sure no one wants to offend someone. If they're meeting a new group of people, I think they just kind of keep it simple. They don't want to branch out because they want to stay, like I said, they want to stay in their comfort zone. And they just don't want to offend anybody.
Exactly, and we don't want to offend anybody. But having said that, that lack of openness and comfort to talk and learn is actually causing some concerns. When people look at us, I challenged the audience at the beginning, you know, they see me and they see a guy who's African American, but I'm also Roman Catholic. And yet I have done independent marriage ceremonies for my students with the understanding of my church. A lot of people didn't know that that's possible if you do a civil ceremony with no religious content whatsoever. These are all the things that we're learning about in our society, but I have the question, how do we get people to be more open to learning?
I think what Veronica referred to in her previous comment, we are nervous, we are afraid to, I don't know what we are afraid of. Maybe we are afraid to judge people. I would love people to walk over to me, ask me questions. Hey, why do you wear a turban? Does the color mean anything? Why do you have a long beard? Why do you carry this bracelet, iron bracelet? Tell me about yourself. I would love to share anything about myself with anyone who is interested.
Now, people watching might say, well, we didn't know we could do that. We didn't know that that would be appropriate.
What I try to do is I'm walking in the street, somebody yells at me, hey, you Taliban, come here. So first learn something about myself, then judge me, then call me whatever else you want to call me.
And that's part of the problem. Yeah. We are relying on TV to tell us how people are. There's this new show out, All American Muslim, and people are watching that thinking that that's the way all Muslims are, that we're this monolith. Could you imagine if the way we educate ourselves about the way people are is through TV?
I'm ordained in the United Church of Christ, and my church in Los Altos invited a group of Muslims for our Thanksgiving service a few years ago.
You didn't invite me?
In fact, no, but we'll do you again. We'll do next time we do that. And we had one of our Turkish friends talk about being the newest pilgrim to our country. and he was the sermon for the day. Well, it opened up an opportunity for the whole church to meet people that they would normally never meet and ask questions. Why do you wear a headscarf? What's this? What does this mean? And we met in the courtyard and had little finger foods afterwards. And so it goes both ways. Sometimes I feel like you guys are always out there with a sign, ask me about my faith, and we're afraid to invite you in and say, come, tell us about it.
You're looking for people with signs that say Talmud. So we just need to connect the two groups together.
No, I think Evelyn has done a wonderful job of reaching out to various communities. She got me involved with the jail inmates, so I'm working as a jail chaplain with her, going to various jails, making sure the inmates' religious needs are met. To an earlier point that was being discussed, people we invite to our places of worship, mosques, churches, gurdwaras, they are willing to learn. And they are not I hate to use the word a problem. The issue is somebody who doesn't want to learn. And you try and explain it to somebody, hey, I'm not what you think I am. Can you spend a few minutes with me? We can talk about it. So I tried telling them I belong to Sikh religion, and I start talking about it. Oh no, you're all the same. You're all the same. So what do you do with these people?
You have to be patient, but you have to be persistent. I think that's one of the key issues. Let me offer another way of learning that was pretty challenging for some Christian organizations. I belong to a Catholic church, St. Julie Billiart Parish. They did something extraordinary a few years ago. On the bulletin that they have that they give out at the Mass, they spelled out who we are and who's welcome in the church. And it was explicitly those who are poor and those who are rich, those who come from different religious cultures, those who are gay and lesbian, those who are disabled, those who are divorced and married and with families. And you would think, what's the big deal? And yet at the outset of that, there was a lot of buzz around the diocese. Can they do that? Is that allowed? Of course it's allowed. It's part of the expression of St. Julie's. Why don't religious organizations step up and just put it out there? You said a t-shirt or a sign, why not?
It's not a bad idea. I get 50% of all proceeds, though, because it was my idea.
Okay.
So
it's our show, so I get part of that.
Okay, fair enough.
You get the other 50%.
Shouldn't have signed that away. No, you know, it's a great idea, and I think for a lot of the communities about whom we're speaking, we are first or second generation to this country. So there's been kind of that reluctance to go out there and stand on a mountaintop and say, hey, here's who I am, you know, here's all about me. For a lot of us, our parents' generation or even our generation are immigrants to this country. And so we're just kind of trying to fit in and get a job and get a roof over our heads and you know, be seen as a valuable member of the community. And so you're not quite at that level where you feel as comfortable inviting people into your home or going out and doing the type of activism or community building that maybe one would do if they had had a few generations in this country. So I think for many people, it's just a matter of getting to the point where they feel confident, you know, maybe if they have an accent, maybe if this isn't their native country, you know, they're not going to be as comfortable doing that. But I certainly think this generation and the subsequent one will be more open to doing that.
But see, that's where the immigrants and the second and third generation needs to connect with a long-standing indigenous Muslim legacy in this country.
Sure.
Islam built this country. One of the first countries that acknowledged or accepted the American independence was Morocco. Mm-hmm. Muslim slaves built the industry that this country's economy is based on. So you got to connect with that and say, this is not something new. This is not a foreign religion. This is a part of America.
Exactly. You were saying something earlier about this comparison of the salad bowl that we like to think we'll all get along as a good salad bowl, or the melting pot. What was your thought about that?
So the melting pot theory is essentially all of these cultures, ethnicities, religions, they come together and they pretty much blend into one thing. We're all the same. We all have the same core values, core principles. We're all exactly alike, right? But in actuality, it's more like a salad bowl. We have each ethnicity represented in its own group. It has its own community. We have each culture represented as well. So we're not really quite blending. We're more we're in the same bowl, we have each thing acknowledged, but we're not blending together, we're still different.
And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people at San Jose State say, I'm tired of hearing about that melting pot because it sounds like you want us to drain out who we are so that we can become homogenized and be like everybody else, almost robotic. That's not what's intended, but some people hear it that way.
And that is the strength of America, where it's that common question between assimilation and integration. Whereas in France, their idea of integration is you give up who you are and become a Frenchman. That's integration. And that's why the Muslim immigrants to that country are not integrating into French society after even 4th and 5th generations. Whereas in America, the way we see it is you bring who you are to the table and weave that in to the fabric of what it means to be American. And that beautiful tapestry is what makes America beautiful. That's what makes America great.
Enjoy the value of each individual cultural group. In that diversity class, when we talk about this, student raises his hand and says, well, why don't we call it a buffet? We all like to go to buffets and try different things, and we go back for more because we want to know more about the taste, more about the foods, more about the culture. Maybe that's a mindset change that we can consider as well. Let's take the serious tack now. We have airports out there in this country that are very concerned about, attacks on passengers, innocent passengers. So TSA and other groups, police, local police are clamping down. But how are they clamping down? Is it offensive to the point where you guys object? What are your thoughts on that?
You and I were discussing that issue earlier on. You look at Israel, they don't have all these body scanners and pat downs at their airports. So how do they handle? They are the biggest security challenges, they are facing the biggest security challenges that no other country faces. Mm-hmm. So why can't we learn from Israel? Why do we have to invade privacy of our people? Why do,
Well, what I hear in the media and in academia is Israel's in the Middle East. It's had a long history of living there and knowing the cultures, identifying the cultures. They have a knowledge base that we don't.
Well, that's exactly why we should learn from them, because what Israel has learned is that racial profiling, physical profiling, does not enhance security. It actually damages security. With as many false positives that you get even more false negatives. Mm-hmm. The two potential incidents that happened in Israel were a blonde-haired, blue-eyed German and a Korean. So those were people that were to bypass the profiling protocol. So what you have to do is, instead of this appearance of security, you have to have actual security that takes into account people's behaviors, their demeanor, and not the way that they look. But, because if I'm a terrorist, that's not the disguise I'm going to use.
But I think the argument on the other side is Israel, having gone in there, visited years ago, they've got one or two airports they've got to worry about. And the United States has this huge,
hundreds,
number. And I hate the security thing. I hate going through it. I go through security every day at work, and so I have shoes that don't go off and all plastic clothes. But you go to the airport and you're stuck. Maybe you're the token Mexican they're going to pull out, or maybe I am, or whatever, and you just don't know what's going on.
I think that's something we're going to have to follow up on, because this is a continuing issue in our society. But I want to thank each and every one of you for opening up this discussion and reminding the public it's okay. We can talk about these things in a responsible, educated approach and learn from each other. And I think certainly we've learned a lot from each of you today. So thank you for being here. And we want to thank you for joining us for Equal Time. Look for us on Facebook and join us again for another edition of Equal Time.